Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Tonight, startling new pictures of a UFO encounter that has top analysts locked in a heated debate. The authenticity of the pictures is above suspicion because they were taken by specialists aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery. For the past year, the United States government has avoided discussing what is potentially the most important 30 seconds of video footage to have emerged from the U.S. space program. The footage looks fairly innocuous, but some believe that something is going on here NASA doesn't want us to know about. On September the 12th, 1991, STS-48 lifted off into space for what NASA officials expected to be a routine shuttle mission. But what Discovery's cameras would capture high above the Earth during that mission would prove to be anything but routine.
I heard one or two of the astronauts exclaim on shortwave radio, "What is that? What is that?"
NASA says the objects could be space ice, satellites, or debris. Ufologists interpret the footage as either alien spacecraft engaged in armed battle or an armed response to alien spacecraft by SDI, the so-called Star Wars defense system.
This particular day, they were flying over the Philippines. You'll see what looks like stars in the sky, and then you'll see these objects off to the right of the screen. Within a couple of minutes, you will see an object come out of the clouds to the north part of your screen, and it's heading to the north-northwest. In about 4 or 5 seconds, you'll see a flash in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, and then you'll see a streak of light go by that object. Just missed it there, and one in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. What's being enacted up there is basically a contact with an alien civilization, and that those particular craft are not from here. The flash that we're seeing is probably a mechanism of Star Wars.
Is this finally concrete proof that we're being visited by intelligent life from another planet? Space industry officials answer with an emphatic no.
A lot of things we see on the picture from space are things we're used to seeing here in the control center down here in Houston. They're ordinary events that surround the spaceship. Pieces coming off, water dumps, pieces of ice, insulation. They're just little pieces 10, maybe 20 feet away from the camera. And as they're flowing across the field of view of the camera, there's a flash of light as one of the maneuvering jets on the shuttle fires under autopilot control. Anything floating out there is like opening your door on a windy day and watching the dust in your house blow out. The burst of gas from the jet pushes these little pieces of debris, and off they go.
If that is true, why doesn't the horizon line and the curvature of the Earth's latitude change when that rocket fires in the upper left quadrant or to the west side?
And NASA's explanation defies the laws of physics, according to University of Nebraska at Omaha physicist Dr. Jack Katcher.
NASA's claim is that these are all pieces of ice, and that this flash down here was an attitude rocket adjuster to adjust the position of the shuttle, so it's going to push it in a certain direction, and the exhaust came up like this. Well, if that happened, then the particle should move up in this direction. Those two pretty well fit that scenario, but I have a real problem with the rest of them because, first of all, this one just starts here and continues on down this way, just straight the whole time. Now, that's the wrong direction for an exhaust in this direction, too. So I really have a lot of trouble seeing how you could make an explanation like that work.
Analysis by aerospace propulsion expert David Froning refutes NASA's belief that the objects are conventional spacecraft.
Its behavior doesn't look like a normal orbital debris. To make a turn like that in a conventional vehicle would just be impossible. And to do that, you really have to actually warp and twist space. These certainly do appear to be objects that are intelligently controlled.
NASA has issued several statements insisting the UFOs are chunks of space ice, but they refuse to comment on 2 additional sightings that occurred later in the mission. Here, one object is intercepted by a rocket-like projectile. The object continues as more projectiles pass. Later, on the dark side of the Earth, another object comes into view. Soon, a second, faster-moving object nearly collides with the first, then continues out of frame.
What if, then, they were extraterrestrial craft? Well, then, there are some very scary things happening here. Was it some kind of a missile that we were firing at them with? And if that's the case, then why did we do that? It implies we're prepared to do that we're almost expecting to encounter these things, and then we're hostile to them.
Is our military prepared to launch offensive strikes against incoming UFOs? Government officials won't respond.
It's not a question of whether there is a government cover-up about UFOs. There is. It's the most highly classified topic in all the government and military.
Has the military secretly developed SDI beyond public knowledge, despite their denials?
There have been developments for the Space Defense Initiative of particle beam systems that could have particle beams with the kinds of speeds that we saw going straight up into space.
And if that is the case, why are we shooting at them?
It implies that we expected to see them and that we were ready to shoot, and then we did shoot, so we considered them hostile.
You can look at these kind of lights and these kind of reports of the flying saucers coming around our spaceships. In terms of exploration, this is very traditional. These are our sea serpents. These are our mermaids. 500 years ago, when Columbus's ships went out and the men peered off at the horizon, they could see little things on the horizon. They would misinterpret them or interpret them in different ways or incorrect ways and come back and tell stories. We're getting into the same sort of phenomena here. Well, first of all, a death ray or a laser beam that's in the Hollywood movie shows up as a flash of light and a crash and a thunder and so forth. That's Hollywood. In reality, these kinds of beams in space are invisible because they have nothing to show up on except a target. So you would not see a beam going across the picture.
James Oberg has devoted the last 18 years to aerospace research. Although Oberg insists he is an independent analyst, some ufologists believe he's part of a secret government conspiracy to debunk all UFOs.
It's a bit too trite and a bit insulting to the intelligence of the average American to say, you know, it's something to do with space folklore or space debris.
Let's not forget that these people are not some kind of UFO organization speaking for 10,000 scientists out there. These are a couple of very far out people who are not even accepted in the UFO movement.
Is this merely ice from the space shuttle? Secret weapons testing the military won't disclose? Or is this finally proof that we're not alone in the universe?
It's only a matter of time, but I would wager by 1995 this will be common knowledge, and the fact that extraterrestrials are here will be accepted by everybody.
For a further perspective on the space shuttle footage, we've asked University of Nebraska at Omaha physicist Dr. Jack Kasher to join us. Dr. Kasher, thanks for coming in. Appreciate your time. What evidence can you cite, sir, that those lights that we saw on the tape aren't conventional satellites?
Well, I think the strongest evidence for me is I sat down and I put a transparency in front of the television set, and I tracked 8 of those objects both before and after the flash. And the main one did cut up sharply to the right, apparently in response, if you would believe the ice theory, of an attitude adjuster rocket down here that would push it up with its exhaust. 2 of the 8 objects did that. 4 just continued, didn't react. 2 went up and to the left, which is the wrong direction. And I've looked at that 50, 100 times. I just can't reconcile that in my own mind.
Have you been ostracized at all by the scientific community for holding these particular beliefs?
Not really. You'd be surprised at the physicists that have come up after they've heard me speak about UFOs and say they're really surprised that there is evidence that is at least plausible that these things are real.
You sort of went out on a limb, Dr. Kasher. You said that by 1995 these kinds of sightings would be commonplace. Why 1995? Do you know something the rest of us don't?
Well, I do have some contacts that have given me some information, and I think I based some of it on that. But I think that there is a groundswell of interest in UFOs. People are being more open about the sightings that they have had. And that just builds up. And eventually, what are you going to do when your friends tell you they have actually seen flying saucers hovering above their houses? After that happens to you a number of times, you just have to start believing some of it.
Dr. Kasher, have you seen a UFO yourself or anything that would lead you to personally believe that they're out there?
Well, I haven't seen anything as spectacular, say, as a flying saucer, but I have seen lights in the sky that behave in a strange way that you couldn't explain in terms of normal airplanes. And I do teach astronomy. I know where the constellations are and what meteors are, so I can differentiate between those things. And the objects that I saw were not airplanes, and I'm not really sure what they were.
Dr. Jack Kasher, thank you very much. And we will be back with more sightings in just a moment.
Coming up next, what are these bizarre glowing balls of light? Some say natural phenomenon, some say alien spacecraft. We investigate the mystery of the marfalights.
Those spectacular multicolored curtains of light known as the northern lights. But there is also another lesser-known light phenomenon occurring in the night skies all over the world. and it has continued to defy explanation for almost 2 centuries.
It started out very slowly, but very brightly. There was a single bright yellow light. It was brilliant.
The closer it got, it changed to a kind of a silvery green orb.
It seems to dance or move in a rhythmic way.
And then they go up into the sky, and when they're up there, well, they just have a big party up there.
They weren't hostile. They were very, very friendly, it seemed. They didn't chase us. They didn't descend on us, and they were soft in color. Yellows, soft greens, blues. I don't think there's any question about it. The lights are there.
Marfa, Texas is a small town southwest of El Paso. For the past 150 years, residents, visitors, and scientists have all looked into the night sky and seen dazzling multicolored lights dubbed the Marfa lights. Reported sightings date from Apache accounts in the early 1800s to the Wall Street Journal in 1984.
I think they're Satan's people, tell you the God's truth.
They're ghost lights, and it's ghosts.
It was just eerie to me. Nobody else was afraid, but I was afraid.
Lifetime resident Vern Campbell took these photographs of the lights using time-lapse photography.
And I saw this light coming across the area, moving toward the power line. And I assumed that it was following the power line toward me, and I stood transfixed. As a matter of fact, I was scared, very badly frightened. I don't know what they are. I don't claim to know. I'm not sure I even want to know, but I know that they do exist.
In America, there are at least 100 zones that are regularly haunted by these curious light phenomena. One of the most famous places is Marfa.
Paul Devereaux is a London-based earth sciences researcher who believes geology holds the answer to the Marfa lights.
These lights, nobody knows what they are. They're rather exotic phenomena. They're not UFOs, they're not flying saucers. They're somehow produced by the Earth itself.
Right now, an international team of scientists is in Marfa seeking an explanation to the light phenomenon. The team is headed by one of the top physicists in the world, Yoshihiko Atsuki.
This is a research work on the fireball, so-called Marfa light. We believe this is a kind of a natural phenomena. A natural phenomena means this is some kind of atmospheric electricity.
The team has established a base camp just north of the official viewing site open to the public. State-of-the-art atmospheric technology has been flown in and set up. All manner of recording devices are also in place. Since the team does not know the true source of the Marfa lights, they also acknowledge the spiritual. A Buddhist priest performs a ritual he believes will summon the lights. Early in the investigation, the team was frustrated. The lights did not appear.
We watched and watched, but nothing we obtained, nothing filming, nothing eyewitness observation. So we was very disappointed.
Mission specialist Ed Hendricks tried out new detection devices while the team waited. Hendricks' obsession with the Marfa lights began on February 2nd, 1991, when he had his first sighting.
I was flabbergasted. I don't think I've ever been the same since. I've been fascinated and almost obsessed by it, trying to figure out what could possibly do something like that.
Hendricks specializes in the science of spherics, the study of the sounds of the atmosphere. He has previously recorded strange sounds which accompany the appearance of the Marfa lights.
They're long, kind of descending pitch signals that sound something like.
On September 1st, 1992, as Hendricks set up his equipment, the team's first light suddenly appeared on the horizon.
Wow. There it is, it's going again. It's flickering, wow. It's got different colors. It's got red and yellow, and it's flashing. It's flashing very rapidly. Looks almost like a firefly. It's very bright now. It's getting brighter, and it looks a little bit red. It's dividing in two. The two pieces are moving apart. There they go, and they're getting real close. And they've crossed again, and they're just continuing this. They're going back and forth, swinging back and forth, and they're doing this as though this is what I think people mean when they say that the lights are doing a dance. I think they're gone. I think that's all.
What are these dancing, multicolored lights? While this investigative team searches for an answer, other scientists say the lights are nothing more than the headlights of cars traveling on nearby Route 67.
I don't believe there are any facts to support the myths. We cannot say that there's no manifestation of the devil or flying saucers or Indian ghosts, but there are no facts to represent that. There are some facts to indicate very strongly that what most people see are car lights on Highway 67.
There are people who are skeptical about the Marfa lights and who believe that what everybody sees are car headlights, and indeed many people do see car headlights and assume that they're Marfa lights and believe that. But even the most serious skeptic, the people who attribute all of the phenomenon to car headlights, could not possibly have seen what we saw and conclude that they were looking at car headlights, because cars could not be made to do what we saw those lights do.
And with the sightings dating back to the early 1800s, car headlights must be ruled out in those cases.
Right now, I don't know what they are, and I'm continuing to work on that. I have some more years left, and all that time I'm going to continue to look at it until I figure it out.
We have no facts that illustrate that it's anything beyond the natural.
For the people who live in Marfa, the parade of scientists and specialists who work here are just part of life. And so too are the Marfa lights that they have witnessed their whole lives and explain in their own way.
It's just there. And it's been there all these many years. And with all these people trying to find what it is, I don't think they will, and I hope they don't. It would be nice just to remain the Marfa mystery light.
The problem with understanding the Marfa lights is not that they can't be explained, but that there are so many explanations. Theories range from UFOs to headlights to weather anomalies like ball lightning. Some even suggest that the lights are jackrabbits who brushed up against phosphorescent vegetation. But so far, all these theories remain unproven. According to the most recent Roper poll on the paranormal, 18.5 million Americans report having seen a ghost. One of those people contacted us with a remarkable photograph that he took near his home in Hayward, Wisconsin. Northern Wisconsin is a freshwater fishing paradise, and some say a haven for ghostly apparitions. Skeptics dismiss these stories as folklore designed to lure tourists. But eyewitness accounts are plentiful, and now potential hard evidence has surfaced, an intriguing photograph.
I looked up, and here I see this white figure above the tree line, and it's slowly descending towards the trees.
Al Denninger has been a fishing guide through the waters of the Chippewa flowage for 17 years. He knows these waters like the back of his hand. But last October, he saw something he couldn't explain.
You could see it actually pass through the trees and slowly descend right above the shoreline. And the object was 10, 12 feet tall. I took one picture with the Polaroid. Slowly, this object moved down the shoreline that way, towards the west. Moved about 50 yards, stayed there maybe 10, 15 seconds, and slowly ascended right straight up into the sky and was gone.
Denninger claims he photographed this apparition of a human form floating above an area locals called Ghost Island. Later, he had his photograph enlarged for better analysis.
I had the original looked at by a photo expert. He says, first of all, you can't dupe up a Polaroid. He says, well, I can't tell you what it is, but whatever it is, it's really there.
When word of Denninger's photo got out, more eyewitnesses came forward, claiming they'd also seen the apparition.
Two young men were fishing there at midnight, and one of them saw a white-robed figure about 8 feet from the ground, sort of floating among the graves. Al sent them the picture, and they called up and says, that is what we saw.
Stories of discontented spirits haunting Ghost Island have existed since Wisconsin's Chippewa River was dammed in the 1920s, causing floodwaters to engulf the island's historic cemetery. Most of the graves were moved to higher ground, but locals worry about the plots that were left behind. Could the apparitions be restless souls searching for their displaced loved ones?
I've always had an open mind, and I've always figured that you're a little naive to think you're probably the only one in this universe, but whatever I saw, it definitely wasn't from anything I've ever seen before.
If you photographed or videotaped what you believe to be a ghost, or if you had an encounter with the paranormal, our Sightings investigative team wants to know. Join us next time for new investigations into the unexplained. For Sightings, I'm Tim White. Good night. Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. In a new investigation, we found that werewolves seem to be more than just fantasy. They could be victims of what's known as lycanthropy. Without warning, victims say that they're turned into raging animals. The cause? Some believe it's a mental illness. Others, that it's the result of demonic possession. Rational men who turn into irrational, salivating beasts may be Hollywood's version of a classic werewolf. But real werewolves aren't created by makeup artists. To outsiders, this small English town of Southend-on-Sea seems quiet, picturesque, even quaint. But there are secrets here, an evil that lies just beneath the surface. You can't see what invisible danger lurks here until Bill Ramsey tells you his story.
The story began when I was 9 years old. It was a very warm summer's evening. Suddenly the air went very cold. There was a terrible stench in the air, and I just flew into the most horrendous rage that my mother and father came out to see what the hell was going on. And the fence post was 2 or 3 inches square. It was set into concrete in the ground. I pulled it out and smashed it on the floor till it broke. Well, I don't think I could do that now. My mother and father just couldn't make out why their little 9-year-old boy suddenly started to act virtually like an animal in the garden.
Bill Ramsey thought it was an isolated childhood event. He grew up, married, had children. But then the violent episode from his childhood came back to haunt the adult. Strange animal behavior would overtake him, violence he couldn't control or explain. At first, he could keep it secret. But then one day, Bill Ramsey bit someone in public, and the animal inside him wasn't a secret anymore. Soon after, Ramsey attacked the nurse at Southend Hospital.
I just had the feeling that ultimately I would kill somebody.
Then, without reason or warning, Bill Ramsey attempted the murder of a police officer. He was locked up, and his life became a tangle of police, psychiatrists, and reporters.
I envisaged being in prison for the rest of my life, or in a secure mental hospital the rest of my life, for something I knew I would never be responsible for.
The unassuming man with the tragic secret was famous now as the werewolf of Southend-on-Sea.
What was causing it? I was literally, felt like just committing suicide.
Word of Ramsey's bizarre behavior spread as far as rural Connecticut, where authors Lorraine and Ed Warren were intrigued. The Warrens have documented over 7,000 cases of the paranormal, and for the past 24 years, lectured on demonology at major universities worldwide.
Like I told Lorraine, I said, Lorraine, I'm not going to go before the public and start talking about a werewolf. I said, it's going to be interesting to go there, see what we can do to help this man, but that's about it.
He felt that that was just stretching our credibility just a little too far to believe in werewolves. But I believe.
The Warrens went to England to investigate Ramsey's case. They had many questions. Was Ramsey a common criminal? Was he mentally ill? Or was he really a werewolf, possessed by what they believed was the devil? They spoke with Inspector Tony Belford, who was there the night Ramsey tried to murder a fellow officer.
What I actually saw that night, I couldn't really understand what it was. All I knew that it was something I'd never witnessed before. It was not natural behavior.
That night, Bill Ramsey became confused and lost control. He picked up a prostitute and without explanation drove her to the police station.
So I took the prostitute inside, leaving Sergeant Terry Fisher out in the yard with Ramsey.
He had these mad, staring eyes and this maniacal expression. That's all I can describe it as. But the worst thing was what he was saying, and it was said in a very malevolent way. And I'll quote from the report I made shortly afterwards. He was saying, "The devil is in me. When the devil is in me, I am strong. I'm going to kill you. I am strong, and you are going to die."
Ramsey lunged for the sergeant's throat. Fisher, unarmed, responded with a powerful knee to the groin.
He sort of went, "Ugh," and crouched down, and he shrugged it off again. He became stronger.
And when I came out into the yard, I saw Terry Fisher on the floor, just over this location, with Bill Ramsey sitting on top of him with his hands around his throat.
Then there were bobbies that came to their sergeant's aid, and he threw them off, in their words, like they were matchsticks.
A little voice back here said, "Terence, you've come unstuck this time."
And when you see the size of this ex-police officer, you'll say to yourself, what scared him so much? Why this one experience? Because he's seen something that very few people ever see. He's seen the transfiguration of a man into a wolf.
It took 5 officers to subdue Bill Ramsey, who was not under the influence of any drugs.
When I say he snarled or he growled, it was the impression of his lips turning up and showing his teeth. And I can recollect actually saying at the time in the reports that I filed that he took on the appearance of a mad dog.
Like a caged animal, Ramsey tried to escape.
His head, right arm, up to his shoulder was outside this hole. It's difficult to actually visualize a head and an arm out there, but I can assure you, I saw it, 5 or 6 firemen saw it, a doctor saw it, and I would suggest up to 7 or 8 policemen saw it, none of which could believe what we'd actually seen.
Finally, Ramsey was heavily sedated, soaked with liquid soap, and squeezed back through the hole. Badly shaken, Officer Fisher took early retirement. Inspector Belford was left to account for Ramsey's bizarre behavior.
I submit this report for your information, and to have recorded the fact that it is in my opinion that this man will, if not controlled, end up causing fatal or serious injury to some person.
Criminal charges were not filed. Instead, Bill Ramsey was committed to a mental hospital.
Everybody thought I had a mental problem. It just didn't seem right. But I had no other answer. I couldn't say, well, it's not a mental problem, so you do this normally then, do you? Is everybody just normal behaviour? Of course it was a mental problem. Where else could they send me? There was nowhere else.
After psychiatric tests failed to pinpoint the source of Ramsey's behavior, he was released.
What is left? The paranormal, the unknown. And that's where we come in.
Warren's told me that it wasn't a mental illness. I had no mental illness. I was possessed, demonically possessed with a wolf spirit. Oh, God. I've heard it all. And he kind of closed the evening with, would you come to the USA and be exercised? Exercise? Come on. There's some absolute rubbish they were giving me here. But maybe. I've been through all the other avenues, remember.
Coming up next, the shocking real-life exorcism when our frightening werewolf story continues.
The lips rolled up, the teeth protruded, and he tried to bite.
Bill Ramsey was skeptical about the assertion that his werewolf behavior was caused by demonic possession. But ultimately, in desperation, he made the decision to go to America for an exorcism. A British newspaper paid Bill Ramsey $20,000 for the rights to his story. His private ordeal was now a public spectacle to be played out in rural Connecticut. It was here that the Warrens introduced him to Bishop Richard McKenna, a priest who had performed the dangerous ritual of exorcism many times before.
Nearly be exercised, no question about that. I would think that being possessed by the devil is the worst evil that could befall anyone.
I didn't know what to expect. And when you enter in a realm of the unknown, you're obviously very, very scared.
Since Ramsey had shown superhuman strength, 6 bodyguards with stun guns protected the bishop. Rare still photos are the only visual record of the exorcism.
Lord permitted, the devil could easily kill the exorcist. As I proceeded with the prayers, he didn't seem to be himself. It was just some other person were taking over him. He himself seemed to almost go into a kind of a daze.
I remember him coming to me, at me with that stole, placing it on my head, and it's as if he'd hit me with a hammer almost, because I just did not know anything after that.
It started from behind him, and the muscles in the back of the neck all began to enlarge, and the ears began to point, and he howled.
Speak, devil. Be gone in the name of God. Leave him alone. Go back to how we came from. God.
Then the hands clawed in such a manner that no human hand could claw like that.
He had begun to make the signs of the cross on his forehead and on his breast, and then he would violently react and shine his hand at me, and he snarled like an animal.
The lips rolled up, the teeth protruded, and he tried to fight.
I am the Lord, ready to come for what keeps you here. Go on, Satan. Leave him alone. And the devil did leave him. He came to himself.
As I came out the exorcism, you feel that you're a new person.
The man was freed. The man was freed.
I felt I wanted to kiss him, kiss Bishop McKenna, because what he'd done. I believe that I was ultimately possessed by the devil, yeah.
Was Bill Ramsey mentally ill or the victim of demonic possession? No one knows for sure, but one thing is clear. What the police, psychiatrists, and his family couldn't help, the exorcism did. Ramsey returned home to England, and in the 3 years since his exorcism, Bill Ramsey has not had a single violent episode. Almost every time Massachusetts housewife Stella Lansing takes a picture, she gets unexplained images on her film. Using any type of camera at all, with any type of film or videotape, Stella Lansing records what appear to be images from another dimension. We've all had strange things show up on our pictures. Glitches, scratches, strange patterns of light and shadow. Weird images are bound to show up every once in a while, but researchers in the field of paranormal photography believe some of these photos are actually a window to the supernatural. For 30 years, Stella Lansing has captured bizarre anomalies on film and videotape. Nearly every single time she takes a picture or shoots home movies, strange images appear. Here, a severed arm mysteriously floating in front of this woman's head. Strange facial lesions mark her own self-portrait. A mysterious monk appeared while she was taping a television special about Queen Elizabeth. There's a series of unique clock-like images that defy cinema and time logic, and were unheard of in the field of paranormal photography, until now.
I probably didn't realize that it was any kind of a gift or anything in the beginning. I was just trying to get proof of what I was seeing. I tried with every kind of camera I had, and as this went along, I asked someone if only I had a movie camera, and they let me borrow theirs, and that's when I started to get my very first nighttime sighting.
There is usually a rational and mechanical explanation for what produced a given image on the film, as opposed to a supernatural answer.
The idea that Stella was experiencing more than just mechanical failure first occurred to her while shooting these high-tension wires near her home in Massachusetts.
Suddenly, this burst of light came off of the knoll where I was just facing there and shot up. It seemed like in that direction, toward the moon, in the direction of the moon, south, southwest. And as it did, all these multicolored lights were flashing, and that's when I got this object that looks like arms sticking out.
A frame-by-frame analysis of Stella's Super 8 film reveals these astonishing images. A group of 4 men, which photo experts have named the occupants. In the 20 years since this Super 8 image was captured, photo analysts have debated its authenticity. I took the footage of the occupants to the Brooks Institute, the prestigious photography study center in Santa Barbara, California.
What could affect a photographic negative like that?
A stray light entering from a small hole near the camera lens, possibly some kind of after effect when the film was taken out of the camera, some kind of a very fine, hard, and short light strike that produced those patterns.
8mm motion pictures is so small, frame by frame, that it's virtually impossible to fake them without a sophisticated laboratory and animators. You'd have to run a Walt Disney studio to do it. A person like Stella Lansing could not do it.
Even more mysterious than Stella's Super 8 image of the occupants is what happens when the film is transferred to videotape. Then, unidentified voices suddenly appear. Analysts could not explain how Stella's silent 8mm film, with no soundtrack, could suddenly produce sound, replayed here at a slower speed. With no technical knowledge of photography herself, Stella searched for someone who could explain the images in her photos. Dr. Bertold Schwartz, a noted psychiatrist and author, took her case and has been studying Stella Lansing for 21 years.
When I first met Stella, I became more and more curious, because here is a human being that gets these things, the kind of things you read about in the paper, but is seldom documented as one would prefer.
In fact, it was Stella's meticulous records that set her apart. For 30 years, she had kept detailed logs of all her photos and films.
As one went over the notes that she had laboriously collected through the years, she'd write on the film boxes, she'd write on scraps of paper, she'd collect clippings, and you put it all together, the story seems to hang together. And we have to ask the question, how do we explain it? Questions and questions and questions, but then it becomes fascinating, a real mystery of the first order.
Some of Stella's most bizarre images are referred to as the clock series, images captured on film that surround such things as airplanes and church steeples, appearing at night and during the day. Strangely, when the single lights of the clock formations are enlarged, they reveal spacecraft-like images. And even more astonishing, these so-called spacecraft extend beyond the edge of the film frame.
It overlaps the frames. Indeed, the time-space barrier is smashed in some way by this housewife.
Rand, the clockwork patterns on Stella's photographs, what do you make of them?
I can find some rationale in calling them a mechanical problem in the camera. Some of the consistencies from frame to frame indicate that the exposure was produced not in the camera, but somewhere as a light leak entering the camera, or some other pattern. The pattern appears to be very similar, but not always the same.
But Stella Lansing still got the clock-like formations when she used 6 different cameras, 2 different types of film, inside, outside, in daylight, and at night, in 5 different states. She even succeeded when her camera was switched for another at the last moment. So could Stella Lansing be somehow affecting her films subconsciously? To find out, Dr. Schwartz has subjected Stella to psychiatric evaluations and brainwave analyses. In 1971, Dr. Schwartz himself filmed this breakthrough field study. He and Stella journeyed from Springfield, Massachusetts to Munson Hill, to the power lines where Stella first photographed the occupants.
Stella's saying, oh, they're going to come, they always do. And by golly, we see these 2 orange or reddish-orange globes. First there's 1, then there's 2, they're blinking, they seem to hop around. Aim my camera at it, I hope I'm capturing this, I don't know. What does this mean?
This causes me to believe that either there's some type of mind projection, either she's somehow projecting these images onto the film from her imagination, from her own mind, or that another theory, which is certainly not provable, not by me anyway, is could things exist in another dimension, in a borderline way where they flicker in and out of our dimension.
21 years later, we accompanied Stella to Munson Hill, the site of her original photo expedition. We wanted to see if Stella would get the same paranormal images under our own controlled conditions.
There's some kind of interaction here. Whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, it's just like when I'm driving, I seem to know where to look. I mean, I don't have eyes in the back of my head, but I seem to know when to look somewhere, and I look like that, and there it is.
Stella also took still photos of our Sightings producer and camera crew. And surprising results occurred at the Palmer Photo Lab, where Stella's film was developed. The first thing their technician ruled out was light flare.
This is what's interesting right here. This seems to have solidity to it here. It's almost an oval shape. And right here also has the same thing. That is really strange.
It has all the attributes of classic camera flare.
But all the light was behind Stella, not behind the subject.
There appears to be some sort of a light source just breaking over her shoulder.
But it would be visible to the naked eye. It would be like a flash bulb or something.
It could have been a very transitory event, very short in duration, where the human eye and brain in combination just didn't recognize it, but the film did for whatever reason.
I believe in what I'm doing, and I know there's something out there. Nobody can tell me it isn't.
Debate continues on what is actually appearing in Stella's films. We'll keep you updated on the results of future investigations. With the study of paranormal phenomena in its infancy, we may never know for sure what's really appearing in Stella Lansing's films. Are the images ghosts, UFOs, or some unexplained byproduct of Stella's own mind? On a recent edition of Sightings, we brought you the story of the Lamonis family of Dallas, Texas, who said they were being terrorized by a ghostly entity. To rid their house of the ghostly presence, the Lamonises participated in a seance. Our team of psychics appeared to make contact, but since then, the entity has returned.
We have decided to move. Things are still happening here in the house.
She knows that I don't want her terrified, and I don't want the children scared to death. And it's best that they move.
The Lamonises can't live with the fear any longer. They've moved out. But no one knows what awaits the next family that lives in this Dallas house.
To report your sighting, call 1-900-740-SIGHT. Each call, 75 cents a minute. Average call lasts 2 minutes, and you must be 18 years or older. Again, the Sightings hotline, 1-900-740-7483.
Join us next time for new investigations. For Sightings, I'm Tim White. Good night.